want to welcome all of you here to this We Are Seneca Lake 2 rally. It's also called We Are Seneca Lake 2 and Frostbite Festival, I think, today. This rally today is all about showing solidarity for all of you and the people who are opposed to this awful Crestwwod project. It's also to send a message to Schuyler County that this lake belongs to everybody. It doesn't belong to the misguided people that voted for a resolution supporting Crestwwod.
Can't buy everybody off.
Not so far. And when I agreed to do this, I didn't realize how cold it was going to be out here, because normally this time of the year I'm in Mexico. So that's just the way it goes. When I'm not doing this, I write a column for the Finger Lakes Times newspaper. And I know the photographer from the Finger Lakes Times newspaper is here, and I hope that the publisher came out. He said he was going to be here. Let me tell you what we're going to be doing today. We're going to hear from some speakers right here. Then we're going to be walking through town. I wanted to do a quick thank you before we get to our speakers, and that's to all of the many people who have contributed to put this whole thing together. You saw even some of the organizers shoveling snow just a few minutes ago, just so we'd have a place to stand. So there are way too many people to name, but a thank you to all of the people who have contributed to this. I wanted to do a special shout out to the Finger Lakes Times. I don't know how many of you saw the newspaper on Thursday, but they ran an editorial. An editorial against Crestwwod, and an editorial encouraging people to come out to this. And I have to tell you that in the year 2015, you don't see many newspapers sticking their necks out that far. So I think they get a big applause for that. The last thing I'd like to do is say thank you to all of you, and have you give yourselves applause for coming out for this. So give yourselves some applause. That was pretty good considering all the mittens that are on. Key organizers of this. She's a real spark plug. I met her about a month ago at down to the Crestwwod gates while she was waiting patiently to be arrested by the sheriff's deputies. If you know Laura Salamandra, you know that waiting patiently is not one of her strongest suits. But I'd like to call her up to say a few words. Laura?
Today's attendance is certainly a testament to Seneca Lake. Thank you everyone for coming. My name is Laura Salamandra, and I'm a Geneva resident. I'm a waitress, an aunt, and an active Seneca Lake defender. The reason I am here has been the same since the day of my first arrest at the gates of Crestwwod. It is simply because I drink the water. My family drinks the water, and someday my children will drink this water. I'm not a radical or a troublemaker. This issue is not a political one. To me, it isn't even controversial. It is a safety issue. Crestwwod threatens our safety, and we must fight back. In an ideal world, right always wins, and the power that comes along with big money could be stripped away by a single righteous effort. Realistically, this is not the case. Realistically, we need you. Schuyler County has proved to us that we cannot trust it to make the decisions regarding our water. We also must not rely on Schuyler County to defend it. Geneva and surrounding communities must rise up and raise our voices to ask, where is our vote? Why is Schuyler County the only vote that matters when our families drink this water? We must follow in the footsteps of Dr. Martin Luther King, who showed us how to march and taught us how to dream, for we dream of a future for our children with air that they can breathe and water they can drink. We answer to them. Think of them as you march today. There's a poem, Hieroglyphic Stairway by Drew Dellinger, that captures this perfectly. It was shared with me by another Seneca Lake defender. I have found courage and inspiration in it. I'd like to share it with you now, and I hope that you find the same. It's 3:23 in the morning, and I'm awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do when the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing, as the mammals, reptiles, and birds were all dying. Did you fill the streets with protests when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew? Today we are filling the streets with protests because Schuyler County tried to steal our say in what happens to our own water. Start to formulate the rest of your answer. What will you do? Call your representatives, sign the petition, take the pledge to protect Seneca Lake. Whether you find your place on the line or you start to change minds through daily conversations, do something. The people of the world are watching. Your actions are giving them hope. Your grandchildren and your great-great-grandchildren are depending on you. After all, they are Seneca Lake too. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. That was very nice. Thank you. Our next speaker is Steve Churchill from Seneca County. He's a supervisor who chairs the county's Environmental Affairs Committee. And from what I've heard from other folks in Seneca County, he takes that very seriously. He's one of the main forces behind getting the area governments organized against this Crestwwod project. And he needs to be really recognized for and credited with introducing a word that we haven't heard much, but we're going to hear a lot more of thanks to Steve. It's called regional. We have a regional issue with Crestwwod, and we have regional problems that need to be dealt with. Steve attends so many meetings and so many government organizations and so many other organizations that someone told me that he blew out a GPS in his car. He's worn out so much. That's a lot of miles. Please welcome Steve Churchill.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. As you know, the Finger Lakes were formed some 10,000 years ago, thereabouts. So as an official of Seneca County, and the north end of this lake falls entirely in Seneca County, believe it or not. We're standing in Geneva. That's Seneca. I declare today to be Seneca Lake's 10,000th birthday. So today's a birthday party of sorts. And I think it's safe to say that the day she was born was a day very similar to today. New York lakes, Seneca Lake, Racket Lake, Cranberry Lake, Lake Ontario. There are so many lakes in this beautiful state. And ours, and they come in many shapes and sizes, but Seneca Lake belongs to all of us. And so it holds a special place in our hearts. And as Sandra Steingraber so often reminds us, for those who are sustained by her waters, we are literally made from Seneca Lake. We are Seneca Lake. Here, take that page. This past July, I stood on the southern shores of Seneca Lake. It was a much warmer day. With many of you. And I reflected on what it must have been like to live here some 200 years ago when our nation was in its infancies. The unspoiled lakes, rivers, streams, and virgin forests must have truly been a sight to behold. Our ancestors in those years had no reason to concern themselves with thoughts of water pollution or fear of massive catastrophes that could damage the environment forever. They lived within an endless bounty of natural resources. They were indeed blessed in abundance. We too are blessed, but unfortunately, we have witnessed the power and the magnitude of disasters, both man-made and natural, that can render an environment scarred or damaged for decades or even longer. Sorry I gotta read this. I'm not good at memorizing speeches. Winston Churchill wasn't either. Today, Seneca Lake faces such a threat, and she needs our help. Seneca Lake gives and gives and asks for nothing in return and never complains. But she, the grand old lady, is tired and needs a rest. She has lived and survived for 10,000 years and has survived on her own. But now she needs, yearns, and begs for our help. Now is the time that we need to give back to her. We hear you, Seneca Lake. We hear your plea, and we commit ourselves to do all we can to help defend you from the onslaught of industrialization and ill-conceived plans that threaten your very existence. It has taken some 200 years to arrive at this point in our relationship with Seneca, and there is no luxury of time in our efforts to save her, and save her we must. Now, I want to give credit to Senator Mike Nozzolio, who 2 years ago, on the political front, led the charge. He wrote a letter to the DEC and Governor Cuomo and asked that they deny the permit and help Crestwwod, at that time Energy, find an alternate location. In the past 2 years, 17 regional governments, Seneca, Ontario, Yates, and Tompkins County, along with 13 towns, cities, and villages representing over 500,000 people, have affirmed their opposition to this insane proposal of storing LPG on the shoulders of our great lady, Seneca Lake. And that number continues to grow. Just this past week, Joseph Campbell, co-founder of Gas Free Seneca, and I presented before the Cayuga County Legislature and asked for their support. I fully expect Cayuga County to pass a resolution and join the fight in the coming weeks. And I pledge to all of you that I will not stop fighting for this lake, our region, and our home until this battle is won. And finally, I say to you, Seneca, happy birthday, you old lake. Thank you all, and may God continue to bless our home.
I have to make say one other thing. In addition to writing a column for the Finger Lakes Times, I wrote a novel last year called The Fracking War. I know that some of you have read it, and my marketing director would not let me not say this. But the books are for sale at the table over here, and the money is going to Gas Free Seneca and We Are Seneca Lake. So, it's also a pretty interesting book, I think. Our next speaker is really a household name, not just in the Finger Lakes, in all of New York and all the United States. She's known actually internationally. She's a biologist, she's an author, she's a distinguished scholar in residence at Ithaca College. She's a co-founder of Concerned Health Professionals of New York and New Yorkers Against Fracking. And everyone already has guessed who this is, but I'm going to continue. You remember fracking, that thing that the governor said we're not going to do anymore, okay? Well, Sandra Steingraber was one of the inspirations for my writing that book. And she, along with Doug Cushon, who you're going to be hearing from a little later, helped kick off this whole We Are Seneca Lake movement that has resulted in all of the activity down there at the Crestwwod gates that has so many Schuyler County officials' knickers in a twist. So that's the way it goes. Please welcome a leader and a tireless fighter to helping protect our environment, and my friend, Sandra Steingraber.
Hi everyone, I'm Sandra Steingraber, and who are we? We are Seneca Lake! We are Seneca Lake! We are Seneca Lake! And look, she's wearing our team colors today. So thanks for coming out on this frigid day in support of Seneca Lake. You are already showing the love and resolve that Seneca Lake needs when we use our bodies to peacefully blockade at the gates of Crestwwod. We risk hypothermia as well as arrest, but our hearts are burned brightly even when our toes and fingers are no longer so toasty. And it's love and resolve that is the basis of this citizen uprising known as We Are Seneca Lake. And it's my task today to explain the underlying reasons for our ongoing campaign, which has inspired hundreds to express their discontent with the business plans of Texas-based gas company called Crestwwod by putting their bodies on the line. To date, there have been 200 arrests. Some of us have done jail time, and we all call ourselves the Seneca Lake Defenders. We range in age from 18 years old to 90 years old was the age of our oldest arrestee. We are farmers, teachers, musicians, doctors, chefs, winemakers, grandparents, college students, and faith leaders. And our story goes like this, and I'm going to start at the very beginning. 400 million years ago, there was an ancient ocean here overlying upstate New York, and we're standing on what used to be the northern shore of that ocean, where the sea was shallow. And so when the water evaporated, it left a layer of salt. And over the millennia, with shifting tectonic plates, that flat layer of evaporated seawater ended up being squeezed up into a football-shaped dome of solid salt that underlies the west bank of Seneca Lake. Native Americans knew about it, and they traded that salt. And then later, when their land was taken over by white settlers, they also used that salt. And eventually, during Erie Canal days of New York's history, families drilled down into that salt layer and used steam and hot water to bring it up as brine, spread it on the roofs of their homes, and then children raked it as it evaporated, turning it into some of the finest salt in America. And it went on the Erie Canal all the way to Chicago, Boston, and New York markets. That salt is so fine that it's even been used in saline drip solution. So if you've ever been a patient in a hospital, you probably had Seneca Lake salt going through your bloodstream. And of course, if you live here in Seneca Lake, that water is also your blood, right? So we have we're proud of that salt. It's good for us. However, starting in the 1960s, we started experimenting around with the caverns left behind from that solution salt mining and started storing gas in small quantities. Now, the plan is to store it in massive quantities. The century-old salt plant called U.S. Salt is now under occupation. It's wholly owned, along with 500 surrounding acres, by a Houston-based company called Crestwwod. And now storing gas is no longer a sideline. That's its main business, and salt mining has become the sideline. So it's kind of like the tail that wags the dog. The faster they can get the salt out, the bigger the holes are left and the more gas they can store. That's what they brag to their investors that they're doing. There are two projects, not just one over there, in all these galleries and honeycombs of salt mines under the shoreline. One of them is for LPG, so-called liquefied petroleum gas. That comes in two flavors. One is propane, and the other is butane, butane being cigarette lighter fluid. The decider for whether or not that project will go through is Albany. It's our governor. It's the DEC. And happily, we've gained enough traction through our public hue and cry, through the objections of our health professionals, our first responders, our elected officials, that we've got the attention of Albany, who has now declared a special issues conference, which is like a prelude to a full judiciary hearing. That will take place in February 12th, when the Holiday Inn of Horseheads, New York will be turned into a courthouse. Come, show up, wear blue. Come to that. Take the day off. Rally with us outside between 9 and 10 a.m. and then quietly enter, knowing that we're not there to protest. We're not there to speak. We're not wearing pins or buttons or We Are Seneca Lake. We're just wearing our dress blues to uphold the gravity and the sanctity of law. But we want to bear witness to the expert testimony that will be presented at that time and show with our presence how much we care about the outcome of that prelude to a full judiciary hearing, and that's what we want. That's what we want the outcome of that issues conference to be. Your presence there is useful, February 12th. But there's a second project, and that is to bring methane to store in some of the neighboring salt caverns. Unlike LPG, methane is going to be stored as a gas, not as a liquid. It will also be pressurized. That part of the project has already been approved, and the decider in this case is not Albany, but our federal government. And the decider is an agency called FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We know that FERC set aside concerns that independent scientists put forward, as well as public outcry. I know that because I submitted some of those objections myself, and I helped direct thousands of citizens to send their public comments in, and they were simply not paid attention to. So with that approval began our campaign campaign at the gates of Crestwwod, where we now embrace that time-honored American tradition of civil disobedience to say that decision will not stand. And I am here to invite you to join us. I'm here not just to tell you about it, but also to recruit you to join us. And I'll be very honest, this is what in politics we call a very heavy lift. As far as we know, there has never been a FERC-approved project that has been overturned. But as far as we know, no one has ever carried out a sustained civil disobedience campaign in the driveway of such a project and won't give up until we do overturn it. Because we know something else that's unprecedented. They have never, ever buried LPG and methane on the shores of a lake that serves as a source of drinking water. That's also unprecedented. So if they're going to do something unprecedented, our actions have to rise to the magnitude of their actions, using peaceful, nonviolent action as citizens. That's what we're going to do, and I am playing to win. Please join me in that. So here's what we have on our side. We have 1,300 people who have signed the pledge to protect Seneca Lake. That's your ticket to the dance. Obviously, when you engage in a civil disobedience campaign, you have to be very careful of who you civilly disobedience with. So you guys, if you want to join us, you're all going to be vetted. You start by signing the pledge to protect Seneca Lake, which is on wearesenecalake.com. Then we get to look you up on Facebook. Ask your friends about you. And at that point, you'll get an invitation to do a training with us, because we take this very seriously. We want everyone to be coachable. We want to all agree on what we're going to do there, because our safety depends on each other. As soon as you go through a training, then you find out what it is we're doing. So I know a lot of you are kind of frustrated because you wonder why you haven't heard about the actions before you do them, and that's why, because we're very, very careful. We have a good relationship with law enforcement and the sheriff, and we want to keep it that way. So it's not easy to be a Seneca Lake defender. There's a kind of a couple-step process, but we think it's a club that you might want to consider joining. And with 1,300 people who have already signed the pledge and only 200 people arrested, 200 arrests, you can see that we actually have a very deep bench. So here's our other message today to all the elected officials all around these lakes, all the way to Washington, D.C. and Albany. We can keep this going for a very long time, and we intend to do so. Okay, to close up here, I want to declaim that this is our heritage. The word Seneca appears in some amazing political campaigns in the past, including the Seneca Falls Declaration of Sentiments right over here in Seneca Falls, New York, when a small group of women sat around and had tea together and started a movement that resulted in a constitutional amendment for the whole nation. And we actually train our people in a Quaker meeting house not far from here, where those same women gathered to plan that campaign, and the Seneca Falls Declaration of Sentiments hangs on the wall. So this is in our blood. This is part of what we do in this part of the world. We make change that everyone can benefit from. Every now and then, we get to grow up in a moment in history where we get to change history in a big way. And I feel lucky, really lucky to be part of this movement. Even when I was in jail, I felt lucky. My dad had to go off and fight Hitler when he was 18. For him, ridding the world of global fascism was his great calling. And he said, when you have a name like Steingraber, you can't act like a good German. You have to do the right thing, put one foot in front of the other, and it doesn't matter how overwhelmingly powerful your opponent is. You simply have to take action. I'm not picking up arms. I'm doing it through the traditions offered to me by Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. and Susan B. Anthony, who was arrested right up here for voting in a presidential election in Rochester, New York. I'm taking my father's resolve, combining it with nonviolent peaceful disobedience, and I feel that we are never going to quit. And I invite you to consider being part of that. So again, wearesenecalake.com. Anytime on this march, you can whip out your cell phone and put your name on there, and you'll get an invitation from us. So in the meantime, will you march with me today? Will you march with me today? And will you blockade with me tomorrow? All right, let's go do it. Thanks, everyone.
We are Seneca Lake!
I've been a journalist for 42 years, and I've always wanted to say we're going to march on City Hall. Now, the City Hall that we're going to march on, however, is a friendly City Hall. So we're going to be friendly when we get there, and we're going to be friendly as much as you want to be along the way.
We're gonna rise like the water. We're gonna calm this crisis down. I hear the voice of my great-granddaughter saying, shut down Crestwwod now!
Hi, Margie is going to go around with our donation bucket. If you feel like you want to give, we appreciate it. Also, she has her phone, so if anyone has yet to take the pledge to protect Seneca Lake, she can help you do that. All right, thank you.
We're going to have a couple more speakers in just 1 second, but I wanted to read you just a very short excerpt from a letter that came to somebody named Leslie Danks Burke. I don't know if you know Leslie Danks Burke. She ran for Congress a few years ago. She tried to unseat Tom Reed. We love her. And her mother wrote this letter to her, and I just want to read some of the lines from the letter. It will be published. I'll be publishing it tomorrow with a full account about the rally today. But this is to Leslie Danks Burke from her mother. Her mother lives in Colorado. Colorado is suffering from all of the pains of hydrofracking, and it's a very bad situation out there. And here's what she said. She said, "Dear Leslie, when I heard the news that New York banned fracking, I couldn't believe it. It gave me hope for all of America. Now New Yorkers won't wonder, as we do, why are our trees and bushes dying? Could it be what fracking is doing to our groundwater? It inspires me that New Yorkers have shown the foresight to say, hold on, we want to keep what we've got. Let's ban fracking before we lose our precious farms, our precious water, and our clean air. New York gives me hope." So. So it's very fitting that we start with our first speaker here on the steps of City Hall, because the person I'm going to introduce spends a lot of time here at City Hall. His name is Ken Camera. His environmentalist roots go back to the 1970s when he was a student right up the road here at Hobart and William Smith Colleges. About 18 years ago, he started the Lake Party. It's an independent political party and is focused on preserving Seneca Lake. In 2007, his efforts led to the city of Geneva passing a resolution opposing the location of an ethanol plant at the Seneca Army Depot. Since his election to the Geneva City Council 4th Ward in 2012, Ken's been trying to focus the city government's attention on local environmental issues and all those concerns that threaten quality of life in the Finger Lakes. He's also a liaison to the Geneva Green Committee, of which many of you are probably members. Please give a warm welcome to Geneva's own Ken Camera.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I hope you can hold up for a little while longer. I had a speech prepared, and I let my daughter look at it, and she said that it wasn't very good. And so she rewrote the introduction. She said it had to be a little more personal. So I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs that start my talk out, and then I'll finish on a few notes that are on my original comments. All of us have gathered here because of one thing we have in common, and that is protecting our home. Many of us have come to realize and love what Seneca Lake offers us, our children, and the future generations to come. Unfortunately, that could be destroyed if we fail to protect Seneca Lake's great legacy. On a personal note, I take pride in saying, that's me, that I raised my children on the lake, and for that they have grown up to appreciate the beautiful natural resource of not just Seneca Lake, but the beautiful environment that they were raised in. We all have a personal attachment to the lake, or else we wouldn't be here. And for that, we have the duty to defend the lake for our families and their families. Without the lake, Geneva and the surrounding areas and towns will lose what makes them unique. The lake has played a huge role in all our lives, creating wonderful memories. And for that, we owe it to the lake and ourselves to fight to keep the freshwater resource alive. For us, the lake is not a business. It is a part of our home that we need to fight for.
Yeah!
So, a couple more things here, and I'll try. This is the lousy part of the speech. But, you know, we don't have any choice. And we're not environmental whack jobs either. We're here because there's no choice for us, but because this is our home, and we're going to be at the barricades until we win. We're now more than... There's something else that's happened here. We're now looking across the lakes to each other, across all 11 lakes. We look over to Seneca Lake, over to Seneca County. We look down south to Watkins Glen, and we're now connecting. And that's very, very important, and that's very important for the future. So we're finally doing this. The corporations and their servants don't understand the meaning of this region, being both a location and a way of life. They probably only get the location part. Excuse me, to them, it's a business opportunity. This place is where the resources available, and there's money to be made. And they have the corporate shell game in place that gives them the nerve to exploit this lake without being ultimately responsible for the damage they could cause. They have some distinct advantages over the common man and the common good. They can essentially deploy lawyers and experts at the DEC permitting process and the local media, and they can try to co-opt the path to their resource extraction activities. The cost of their lawyers and experts is only fractions of a % of the value of the mineral and the fuel resources they are exploiting. It is a good investment and a business opportunity. The only thing we have as individuals is to affiliate and to coalesce around our cause, to safeguard our lake and preserve our way of life. We have to fight dollars with people. And while Crestwwod is throwing dollars at the permitting and the political process during their day jobs, we have to organize ourselves in our various communities, a very time-intensive activity, and one done mostly in our spare time after hours. In our spare time, we have to gather information, educate ourselves, and spread the word. And thanks to you people, freezing your keisters out there, if I can turn this page. Today, and many others across central New York, we are now in the deployment phase, getting people to the barricades, organizing people in the region's businesses, and waking up local governments. This rally is a big deal. We're here to call more people to private and public action and to advance coalition building across the Finger Lakes region and throughout central New York. We're going to talk to you, Syracuse. We need your help. You have a sick lake that you've been spending 35 years trying to clean up.
That's right.
We don't want that to happen to us.
That's right.
And finally, we're here to thank the hundreds of protesters who peacefully marched and got arrested at the gates of Crestwwod. We're here to thank the grassroots organizers who started Gas-Free Seneca 4 years ago, the wine and business coalitions and their dynamic leaders, the columnists who have told our stories, the Seneca Lake municipalities who petitioned for party status to the DEC conference, and all the other municipalities from Tompkins County to the city of Rochester who have passed their resolutions against fracking and or this misguided and superfluous gas storage operation. And this will be, you might find this funny. And finally, we have to thank the lawyers. Yes, we are thankful to the lawyers of Earth Justice and the National Resource Defense Council who took up our cause. And if I get to the punchline, in their own personal career choices, they believed that their involvement in their profession is not primarily to get rich, but to rather to help make this a better world by in part taking up our cause and fighting a good fight. We thank you, and we are Seneca Lake.
Our next speaker is Howie Hawkins. I can tell, you know. Howie Hawkins was the Green Party candidate for New York governor in 2014. So his name seems familiar. It might be from that, but it might be familiar from lots of other things. He's been fighting for the environment since he was a teenager. He's consistently been opposed to nuclear and fossil fuels, and he supports clean renewable energy since the 1970s. He was co-founder of the Anti-Nuclear Clamshell Alliance. He's also co-founder of Construction Workers Cooperative. He didn't make it to the governor's office this time, but if his history is any indication, we'll be seeing him again on the ballot. So Howie Hawkins, welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm from Syracuse, about 10 of us. Let's hear it from the Syracuse folks. That sounds like about 30. Thanks for coming. I know there are a couple here from Albany. And you know what? We are Seneca Lake too. This is an amazing movement. It was mentioned I helped co-found the Clamshell Alliance, and in May of 1977, May Day, we waited till the spring. You guys are out here in the snow. 1,414 of us were arrested and put in National Guard armories for 10 days. And it created a movement. There were no new nuclear power plants ordered in this country for 30 years. And they had planned 2 nukes. We stopped one. The other Seabrook nuke got built. But that's to say we can make a difference. And 200 people out here in the Finger Lakes, we drew on Boston and New York for the Clamshell Alliance. It was the end of the 60s. The fact that you got 200 arrested and 1,300 signed up, all I can say is I can't wait to join you. I hope I pass your vetting because I want to stop this Crestwwod project. And this is bigger than just protecting the water of Seneca Lake, as important as that is. And that's reason enough alone to stop this project. But this affects our whole energy system and our civilization because we're at the fork in the road. We can stick with the old 19th century dirty fossil fuel technologies that will batter us with climate change, poison us with pollution, destroy our water, make us technologically backward and economically in decline. That's 19th century old dirty technology. Or we can take the green energy path. Clean renewables, solar, wind, water, wave, geothermal. That's the path to protect our climate, protect our environment, preserve our water, clean the air, and build a sustainable prosperity. Many of you are familiar with the Solutions Project, the research done by Cornell and Stanford researchers that looked at what would happen if we committed to 100% clean energy by 2030 in New York State. And you know what they found? Not only is it technologically and economically feasible, it would create 4.5 million jobs. That's 6 jobs for every unemployed person in New York State today. That means people would move back to these upstate towns to take those jobs, manufacturing the solar panels and the wind generators and retrofitting all our buildings to be power plants. Insulated, solar panels on the roof, micro wind, shared solar between different buildings because not every building has the right solar exposure. We're going to build a whole new infrastructure. And you know what else? The energy cost of this renewable energy system by the 2020s will be half what it will be if we stick with fossil fuels. It's a no-brainer. That's the road to sustainable prosperity. Jobs, reasonable energy costs, lower manufacturing costs, because electricity is a big cost in manufacturing. We've got the water. We're sitting right at the fork in the road. And if we let that project go forward, you know what that does? That locks us into decades of an infrastructure that the people invested in want to get a return on. It forecloses the green energy path. So you see, this is a much bigger issue than just our region. It's really, we stand here, we're like trying to open the gate to the right path and close the gate to the wrong path. So, you know, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, Fox, New York Times, Washington Post, they ought to be covering this demonstration. But I think they're going to find out. So, this is a very powerful movement. I am happy to be here. And let's remember that we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for the whole future, for our whole state and our whole nation, our whole world. So take pride in being here, and I'll see you at the gates of Crestwwod.
Great person out there. Thank you. That was a great speech, Holly. Thank you very, very much. We have another, actually two more speakers, but one speaker who I'd like to introduce right now, whose name is familiar to most of you, but I can tell you that his face is really familiar to the sheriff's deputies in Schuyler County. His name is Doug Cushon. The deputies are tired of seeing him down there, and they know that when they see him at one of the bakeries in the downtown Watkins Glen, they have a pretty good idea what's going to happen that day. It ruins their entire morning of donuts. Doug Cushon retired 6 months ago, but he didn't stay retired very long. He immediately started volunteering full-time for We Are Seneca Lake to protect the Finger Lakes region from Crestwwod midstreams. He says dangerous gas storage plan. There's a lot of other words we could put with it, but that's dangerous. Dangerous will serve. He serves on the steering committee for We Are Seneca Lake. He's a co-founder of Coalition to Protect New York, Frack Busters New York, People for a Healthy Environment, Chemung County Alliance, and Elmirans and Friends Against Fracking. And I ran out of ink at that point for all the things that he's involved in. Please give a warm welcome to Doug Cushon.
Greetings to the good people of Geneva, good people of Seneca Lake and the Finger Lakes, and to all you lovers of pure waters and fertile lands of our region. And one more thank you needs to go out to the organizers of this event. I was invited to speak, which is just fine with me, but thank you so much for the organizing. It's nice to get a rest. It's my job to share with you briefly the genesis of our movement, the people's movement, and its evolution to date. First, there were the table setters. About 2.5 years ago, 3 brave souls were arrested at the Crestwwod's gate in protest of the vast damage this facility can produce locally and regionally. About 6 months later, the Seneca Lake 12 were arrested there for much the same reason. They were joined by many, many others recently after FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, approved Crestwwod's plan to expand its methane storage capacity from 1.5 to 2 billion cubic feet. Meanwhile, the Town of Reading Board and the Schuyler County Legislature gave the green light for expanded storage of fracked gases in unstable, unlined, leaky salt caverns. These decisions came as numerous other municipalities around the lake expressed their disapproval of this project. Thank you to those municipalities. Thank you very much. Talks with local and state officials and regulatory agencies regarding methane storage failed. Sandra told you about the LPG. This is about methane. Thank you to those, there was nothing more to do than to go home or fight. And we are fighting. Yeah! And we fight to win. Yeah! Why do we fight? We fight for the health of our families and our communities. We fight for clean water and clean air. We fight for our right to decide what's best for our communities, as we do not accept that corporations are people, nor do we accept that corporations have precedence over the folks who live in our communities. We fight for our First Amendment right to free speech and access to local governing boards, which often turn a deaf ear to the constituents whose ideas oppose their own. Most recently, we fight for our Sixth Amendment rights to open court with media presence. We fight because we must, lest our lives in these beautiful and bountiful hills become much less than what we appreciate today. So what are the goals of We Are Seneca Lake? Goal number 1, we strive to create a crisis of conscience within our communities, to awaken everyone to the dangers of Crestwwod's plan to make the Finger Lakes into the gas storage and transportation hub of the Northeast. By the way, did you know that Crestwwod tells its shareholders that it plans to store not 1.5, not 2 billion cubic feet of frack gases on the southwest shore of Seneca Lake, but 10 billion cubic feet? Did you know that this gas is slated to go to distant markets? I know you know that water fouled at the south end of the lake will migrate northward and spoil the water at the north end. Did you know that last January the TEPCO pipeline, which terminates in Reading, New York, was reversed in order to transport ethane gas from the western Pennsylvania and Ohio gas fields to the Gulf Coast? And that prior to that reversal, up until last January, the TEPCO pipe delivered propane gas to this region. And we had a shortage last year. And I know you know that Crestwwod framed the resulting propane shortage as proof that we need more gas storage on Seneca Lake.
You're lying to us.
Goal number 2, we are saying no to Crestwwod. On October 23rd last year, We Are Seneca Lake organized its first blockade, one day before Crestwwod was approved to begin construction on a large compressor station. On the next day, our second blockade doubled as a rally attended by 300 people, many of you. These were media events intended to alert the folks of this region that the gauntlet is thrown at the feet of Crestwwod and the fight is on. On the third time out, we continued to blockade one gate, and as before, no arrests were made. The people involved in the fourth blockade decided to block 2 gates. The first wave of arrests were made that day after we blocked vehicles at both gates. Since October 23rd, there have been 220 blockades, resulting in 200 arrests and 160 individuals being arrested. All told, 215 people have been arrested at the gates of hell. Are you impressed at the determination and courage of the people around us? I am too. The last 6 blockades were themed blockades. Business owners and winemakers, teachers, musicians, Santa and the Elves, with that iconic arrest scene of Santa in cuffs. Mothers and grandmothers, and growers and providers of local foods. More themed actions will follow. That brings me to you. Goal number 3, we protect what we love. That is our imperative about which we feel passionate, and we want you to join us. This movement is growing by leaps and bounds. Join us in protecting our families and communities, our waters, our air, and our fertile land. And here's how. Once again, simply go to wearesenecalake.com, click on the Pledge to Protect Seneca Lake, fill out the information requested, and click Submit. It's easy as that. Within a couple of days, you'll get an invitation to a nonviolent direct action training. And if you come to that, well, you'll be in the mail stream and get invitations to actions. If you have already signed the pledge but have not been trained, simply respond to the training invitation you received or contact me, Laura, or Sandra. Over 1,300 people have signed the pledge to protect Seneca Lake. Nearly 350 of these folks have completed training in 25 trainings to date. To conclude, the name of our movement is We Are Seneca Lake. Trained members are called Seneca Lake Defenders, and we wear blue, the color of water, if and when we can. And we have a rallying cry, don't we? Which is, we are! Seneca Lake! We are! Seneca Lake! We are! Seneca Lake! We are! Seneca Lake! Who are we? Seneca Lake! Join us, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Doug. We have one more speaker, and before we will adjourn from here to a place called the Left Bank, which isn't really on the left bank, it's on Linden Street, but it's called the Left Bank. I introduced her before, and I don't really have any more words to introduce her, so let's just call her up here. Sandra Steingraver, please.
We have a saying, don't say thank you, say I'll join you, all right?
Yeah.
We are inspiring people all over the world with what we're doing. In the same way that the civil rights marchers who sat down at a lunch counter in Greensboro County, in Greensboro, South Carolina, inspired a nation, so too are we. So I'm going to close with some poetry. This provided by a poet, Rebecca Altman, who lives in Boston, wrote this about us. It's quite long. It's just a couple of, just one excerpt. We are a way station in the great cycling of water. Water becomes bodies. It becomes the blood shed by miscarriage and the tears of a mourning woman. It becomes amniotic fluid, becomes cord blood, becomes the body of the next generation. Water becomes the sweat of labor, becomes milk. Whatever water carries, it carries to us and through us, and whatever is done to water is done to us. The violence committed through water wounds some more than others, but whatever is done to some of us is done to all of us. The story of water is the story of us. The story of Seneca Lake is the story of us. 2 days ago in Mexico City, 1,500 gallons of LPG leaked from a hose and exploded. And it exploded in a maternity hospital and leveled it. 3 people are dead. 2 are infants and 1 is a nurse, and there are 70 people wounded, some of them, most of them critically, and half of those are newborns. And 1 newborn was burned over 80% of its body, and that breaks my mother's heart. That's 1,500 gallons of LPG that detonated. Do you know how much they want to store underneath our lake? Not 10 times that much, not 100, not even 1,000 times. It will be 58,000 times that number. That's not a choice for me as a mother. That's my job, to stand there at those gates and stop that. That is my job, because my son goes to camp every summer in Watkins Glen State Park. That's my job. So here are some words from me. In a book called Having Faith, which is named after my now 16-year-old daughter Faith, when I was pregnant, and I realized during an amniocentesis that I too was part of the water cycle. The obstetrician asked me if I wanted to look at the amniotic fluid she had just removed from my uterus. And when she handed it to me, I noticed that it was yellow. And I said, this is beautiful. This is like an amber jewel. And she said, that's baby pee. We like it yellow. It's a sign of good kidney functioning. And then I realized, oh yeah, there's this marine mammal inside of me, and swimming around. She pees in her own swimming pool, right? And then I began to think, what is amniotic fluid before it's baby pee? It's drinking water. Amniotic fluid is the creeks and wells that fill reservoirs. It's the underground water that fills wells. It is lake water. And before it is lake and creek and rivers and groundwater, amniotic fluid is rain. When I hold a tube full of rain, my amniotic fluid, I'm holding a tube full of raindrops. It is inside the green cells of spinach leaves and the damp flesh of apples. Amniotic fluid is the yolk of an egg. When I am looking at amniotic fluid, I am looking at rain falling on orange groves. I am looking at melon fields, potatoes in wet earth, frost on pasture grasses. The nectar gathered by bees and hummingbirds is in this tube, and whatever is inside a hummingbird's egg is also inside of me. Whatever is in the world's water is here in my hands now. That's why we do what we do. And I'm going to pass the torch to another daughter of mine who's also named Faith. This is Faith Meckley, native daughter of Geneva, 19 years old, and my co-leader in We Are Seneca Lake, and one of the most amazing young leaders I have ever met. And she's going to close us out today. Faith Meckley, I love you.
Hey everyone, I hope my hat's not too distracting. You might recognize it as a snow leopard, and the snow leopards are one of many species facing endangerment right now who may not have very much time left on this planet. We are now at a rate of dozens of species going extinct every day. Every single day, we are losing an unimaginable amount of biodiversity on this planet. And I'm so glad to see all of you here helping to protect Seneca Lake and the Finger Lakes biodiversity. Thank you so much. For 5 months, I walked across the country with a group of people in the Great March for Climate Action. And it was an incredible experience. And I have rallied in Denver. I've blocked a train in Chicago to defend a low-income minority community suffering from pollution. I've rallied in New York City in the greatest climate rally of all times. I've been to DC and walked up to the White House and asked, what are you doing? And I've been all across the country doing this. I've rallied more times than I can think of now, but I never thought I'd be rallying here in my own hometown of Geneva. You're really putting us on the map, and thank you so much. I'm so proud to be here. I'm so proud to be a Genevan right now. After all of this, after going across the country, I never thought I'd be speaking on the steps of my own city hall. So thank you so much. And when I was first realized that I was going to have to come home from the march early to help organize this movement, I was so sad. I was crying. I couldn't stand to leave my marchers. I couldn't understand why this was happening. But all of you have given me hope, so much hope that we will be able to come together and unite and make this happen. And I really believe that we can keep Seneca Lake beautiful for all of eternity. Thank you so much. Now, if you're feeling inspired, if you're feeling fired up, and you need to do something with it, we have a training tonight in Geneva. It's organized that you are welcome to come to. It's from 5 to 7 o'clock at Hobart William Smith Colleges. Meet us up at what's that place called? The Left Bank. The Left Bank. Meet us up at the Left Bank, and we'll give you more details. But please get trained up. And going to training does not commit you to being arrested or civil disobedience. It's the way to break in, learn more, and possibly support those who are planning on getting arrested. So thank you very much. Thank you.
I want one of those hats. I don't know about you.